2020, you remember, the pandemic, the whole world was going crazy, everything was being turned upside down, and it was stress, a lot of stress associated with that. But for Brad Henrichs, he was struck with another blow, because at that time, he was diagnosed with cancer, and he suddenly felt the need to reevaluate his priorities. He looked at his bucket list, and at the top of his bucket list was a ride that he had always wanted to do, an epic ride. He wanted to ride to Alaska. So the planning began, and sometime later, Brad found himself riding his motorcycle to Alaska with his 29-year-old daughter sitting behind him. Some of the trip went as planned, some didn't, but it all added up to what Brad says was an incredible experience. Brad Henrichs' ride to Alaska coming up today. I'm Jim Martin. This is Adventure Rider Radio. Stay with us. We got a good one for you.
I'm Sam Manikin.
Simon. Austin Vince.
Simon Baby.
Helge Pedersen.
Charlie Bowman.
Chris Birch.
Elizabeth Martin.
Jocelyn Snow.
Quentin Smote, and you're listening to Adventure Rider Radio.
Green Chili Adventure Gear offers American-made, heavy-duty luggage systems for all types of motorcycles. You can turn any dry bag into luggage using their strapping system. And of course, Green Chili Adventure Gear is tested in extreme weather and terrain to withstand the abuse that adventure riding gives it. Tough, reliable gear. GreenChiliADV.com. It's wind pressure that powers the Moto Breeze chain oiler. No electrical or vacuum connections. It delivers the oil to a felt pad on your swing arm. No nozzles near your sprockets. 1 ounce of oil gets 1,000 miles or 1,600 kilometers. Get more miles from your chain and sprockets. MotoBreeze.com. Best Rest Products is the maker of the Cycle Pump, the best tire inflator for motorcyclists. You can inflate a flat tire in less than 3 minutes. Is founded, assembled, and warranted for life in the USA. They're also the inventor and retailer of the combination tire iron / wrench, the Hex Wrench. CyclePump.com. This is another one of our bucket list series. It's an ongoing series where we feature a destination through a rider's experience, because word of mouth is the best way to find out what riding a particular destination is like. And in doing so, we'll experience some local culture, roads, and many more things. So maybe you can add it to your own bucket list. Bucket List is one of our regular series collections, along with Rider Skills and Deep Trouble and all the other interviews that make up Adventure Rider Radio. So today for Bucket List, riding Alaska's top of the world highway.
Hi, I'm Brad Henrichs. I live in Bothell, Washington, and I'm currently working for BMW Motorcycles of Seattle as the parts and apparel manager.
Brad, welcome to Adventure Rider Radio.
Thanks for having me.
Hey, what kind of perks do you get working for the BMW dealer?
Not enough, actually.
You don't get like free parts?
I wish we got free parts. That'd be fantastic. When I took the position, people asked me, do you get a discount? And I said, boy, I hope not, because that'll be all my money.
It'd be too much of an incentive for you.
That's right.
Yeah. I just figured that if you worked at a BMW dealership, they're going to give you a BMW to ride. I mean, don't they want you to know the product?
Yeah, absolutely. They do. We get to ride them in the shop during the day and take them out for a spin and get comfortable with all the models and know all the features. Of course, I own one, so I get to ride that every day.
You've been riding for what? How long?
I started riding motorcycles in 2008 on a Ducati S2R 1000, and then got a BMW in 2019, which was my RT, 1250 RT.
In 2008, why did you get onto a motorcycle?
I was working on the east side of Seattle, over in Bellevue, and traffic is absolutely horrible on that road. And and it would take you about 90 minutes to go 14 miles. And so I thought, if I get a motorcycle, I'll be able to use the HOV lanes and be able to get home a lot faster. So that was kind of the incentive. And I always wanted one. It had been in the plan to always buy a motorcycle, but due to family obligations and things of that nature, it just never timed out. So when the timing was right, I jumped on it.
So you had to go get your license and everything then?
Yeah. And funny story with that. My wife actually surprised me with the motorcycle for Valentine's Day.
Oh,
it was a Valentine's Day gift.
She bought you a motorcycle?
Yeah.
For Valentine's
cool, right?
Day? What do you get for Christmas? Holy, wow. I got to tell my wife about this.
Yeah. So I come home from Valentine's Day and I do the traditional, here's your flowers and whatnot. And I didn't get anything, and no card, no nothing. And I had scheduled to get my permit, and I needed to get a helmet. And so she says, well, let's go down to the Ducati dealer and let's look at helmets. And so I was like, yeah, let's do it. Anything to get into a motorcycle shop.
Mm-hmm.
And we went down there and started looking at helmets, and I didn't see anything that really was grabbing my attention. And she said, well, why don't we try to show my girls were with me. I have two girls. And she said, well, why don't you match the helmet up to the bike, show the bike that you're looking at getting. And I turned around and couldn't find the motorcycle anywhere, and then spotted it with a bow on it and started walking towards it and had a sold sticker on there with my name on it.
Oh, nice.
Pretty cool moment.
So then you got into riding. Of course, you get your BMW eventually. But so what got you taking a long trip on a motorcycle? Like, where did you go? How did you go from the Ducati riding to work? And of course, that's going to be a blast, but to travel.
Yeah. So once I got my Ducati and started riding, I wanted to do more longer rides. And that motorcycle just is not designed to do that. It doesn't have any place to put bags or anything. So I started looking around at a different motorcycle, and I wanted to stick with the, sport bike. And so I looked at the sport touring bikes and kind of kicked around a couple of different ones, and then just got my heart set on the RT. And so once I got that, then it was all set to be able to go out and do longer road rides and do the iron butt. I did that a couple months after I got the RT and started planning a couple of longer rides.
So the RT, does that come with bags and everything on it?
Yeah, it comes with side bags. You have to buy the top case, but the side bags are there.
So where did it take you?
My first trip, I went back to Iowa to see my dad. He lives in the Midwest, and we'd taken that trip many times in the car. So I wanted to see him. COVID was happening at the time in 2020. So I just decided it was time to go. Everyone was social distancing, and there was a big caution of being around people. But I thought, hey, I'm on my motorcycle. I'm by myself. I got my helmet. I'll be fine. And so I went across the country and saw my dad. That was my first really big trip on the RT.
What was that like?
It was amazing. Like I said, I've done the trip many times in the car, but being on a motorcycle, all of your senses are alive, and you're able to, smell the smells and feel the weather, and it's quite an adventure.
Mm-hmm. At one point, you ran into a medical issue. Did this become before you decided to do a longer ride?
No, it was as I was riding back to Iowa to see my dad. I wasn't feeling the greatest when I returned. I had some swelling, and I thought, well, maybe it's because the long ride that I was on. And so I just kind of kept a close eye on it. And this was in July of 2021, or 2020. I'm sorry, 2020.
What is it that was swelling, Brad?
Yeah. So that my left testicle was swollen.
Oh, so you're thinking because you're sitting all day on the motorcycle that.
That's right. Yeah,
Right.
exactly. And so I just kind of kept an eye on it. And then, it kind of was getting bigger and bigger and getting to be more of a concern. And so I went and saw a doctor, and they started running some tests. And and quickly realized that I had a tumor that needed to be removed.
Man. Do you mind saying how old you were at the time?
I was 48 at the time. Yeah.
Yeah. You just don't expect it, man.
Right. And, it's an interesting experience going through that, where you know that something's wrong, but don't know exactly how bad it is. And so, you're kind of expecting the worst. And you're right. You think, man, I thought I had more time.
Well, and it happens to other people too, doesn't it? I mean, it's like,
absolutely.
Yeah, it just seems so bizarre. It's like, well, I mean, I know it's a possibility, but I didn't expect it would happen to me.
Right. And so as I was going through that experience, there's a window there where you're waiting. They do some tests, and then you're waiting on the results from those tests, and you just don't know.
Yeah.
You hope that everything's going to be all right, but you just don't know. And so you're kind of waiting for the hammer to drop, of them to say, hey man, you only got so much time. And it's a really unnerving experience.
And when you were waiting, what did you do? What did you focus on? What did you think?
I thought about all of the priorities that I have in my life, my family, my work, the things that I enjoy doing. Riding the motorcycle obviously was top of that list. And I thought, nobody, when you're on your last leg, your final moments, you're not thinking about all of the times that you went into work or should have worked more. You're thinking about the things that you wanted to do or could have done and didn't do. And so I just thought, man, I got to start looking at this bucket list and start thinking about things a little differently.
So you're kind of planning on that you may not have much time, and you're going to try and pack everything into whatever time you've got.
That's correct. Yeah, you're looking at that through a different lens. And for me, at that time, work just was not a big priority. I wanted to do other things and get involved in other parts of my life that brought me joy and brought me passion.
So what'd you come up with? What showed up on your bucket list?
Well, one of them was doing a ride to Alaska. I've always wanted to do that ride. I've heard it is challenging. And living in Seattle, I thought, hey, man, that's not too far. I can just pop right up there. And then I started to do a little research and realized it's a little more challenging than what I first thought. I started watching some YouTube videos and people that were making the trek up there. And, they're spending 3 weeks, 4 weeks, 5 weeks, to make this journey up and back. And I thought, well, I don't have that much vacation time. And I don't know if I can get my family to sign off on, hey, go ahead and enjoy yourself for a month. And, we'll be here when you get back.
Mm-hmm.
And so I just started looking at that, how I could do it in a shorter amount of time. And really came down to, you've got about 3 weeks is about the quickest that you can do it.
When you say the people that you were looking at that were going, on YouTube, et cetera, what trouble were they having?
They weren't having trouble. It's a long distance. And if you want to enjoy the trip and see things along the way and not just log miles, then, it's going to take a little bit of time.
Yeah. And that's really what you want to do. It's not an iron butt thing that you want to just race up there and race back. I mean, that would be one way to do it. I guess that could be somebody's thing, but you're interested in the whole adventure of it.
Yeah, you want to see all of the sites along the way, and what I learned through that is how much history there is with the Alcan Road going up to Alaska, and how that tied into World War II, which I had no idea until I started doing some research of how much influence America had on that road in Canada.
Mm-hmm. For military access.
Correct.
Mm-hmm. We'll talk about that.
So they wanted to build a road in up to Alaska in as early as I think 1932, and there was just no interest in doing it. It was expensive, and the country was coming out of the Depression, and so there was just no interest in putting the road up there. And they revisited that conversation in 1939, and again, no interest. It's it's a long ways. Just not a lot of people would be going up there, they thought, and so they put it on the back burner. And then when Pearl Harbor gets attacked and the Japanese start to control the Pacific Ocean, the U.S. government thinks, hey, wait a minute, they could have access to Alaska, and we don't have any way to defend it. And so they built this military road. And it's amazing what the military can do when it gets its mind made up on something and becomes determined, because they made that road in about 6 months. So bridges and all.
Yeah, that's incredible. And especially with what it has to go through. I mean, you're talking a northern climate here.
Right, exactly. And that climate is harsh even under the best conditions.
And the surface they're building the road on is muskeg with permafrost underneath.
Correct. It's the surface, the trees. It's heavily forested, and then the wildlife. There's a lot of wildlife up there, so I'm sure that played a role in them building that road.
And with your thought about riding this route, what were you planning on seeing? What did you want to spend time doing while you were riding the route?
Well, I definitely wanted to see some of the old road. A lot of it has been replaced and updated. And so I wanted to see the old parts of the road. We ended up stopping at a bridge that is still there. It's called the Kisakatwana, I believe is the pronunciation. The bridge is still intact, and so we took a little side shoot and went up there. And you can't go across the bridge on your car, but you can walk across it, and it's still up there. So that was really neat to see. And then as I came back from that bridge and turned around and looked at my motorcycle, I was kind of taken back because there's my German BMW motorcycle on the original road built for World War II. I kind of thought that was.
And of course, you can imagine if you went back to when that road was being built, the thought that there may be some German-made vehicle riding that road would just be unthinkable.
Correct. Absolutely. Yeah, at that time, for sure.
Well, while you're planning this and while you're sort of doing your bucket list, how does your wife and daughters feel about you, maybe dealing with the end of life being fairly nearby and you're talking about going off on adventures?
Yeah, well, I had my surgery and they removed my tumor, and I was extremely lucky in the fact that the kind of cancer that I had and the tumor it didn't spread. And so I didn't need to do the traditional chemotherapy and radiation and, that many cancer patients go through. So my recovery was a little bit different. It was mainly, the loss of testosterone and energy and kind of rebuilding that as your body learns to adapt and change. But they were very supportive. My wife, obviously, I told the story about her buying me a motorcycle. She's fantastic and has always been very supportive of the things that I want to do. She was a little reluctant in the fact that, hey, it's a long way. And, what if you get in trouble? And so we kind of talked about that. And then as I planned the trip, I wanted her to go with me and I wanted her to experience it. So the plan was for her to ride up with me, and then she was going to jump on an airplane in Alaska and fly home. And then I would ride back solo down the Cassiar Highway. And so that was our plan, was we were going to kind of do it together.
And what happened to that? Did she back out, or is it because you decided to go with your daughter?
Yeah, so in 2023, I was all set and ready to go. I was at the BMW dealership and I was getting tires put on my motorcycle and was set. I was going to leave in 10 days. And while I was at the shop, I was talking to the service manager and he let me know that there was a position available. And I thought about what that would lead to and went home and talked to my wife and said, hey, they've got a position available there. What if I do a complete career change and try something else? And again, she was supportive and she said, hey, if this is going to make you happy, go for it.
Nice.
And so I went back and talked to them and got the job and said, hey, I'm going to go to Alaska in a couple of days. You're good with that, right? And they said, no. And so I said, well, I'll postpone the trip and we'll do this for a while and see what happens. And it's been great. I've loved working there. I've loved working with our customers and building those relationships with the riders that come into the shop. It's been amazing. And I learned a lot about going to Alaska for people that had been or were going, and they would stop at the shop on the way back. And so I would pick their brain and ask them all kinds of questions and kind of build as much knowledge as I could to set myself up when it would be my time.
So what were some of the key lessons you learned while you were planning for this trip for Alaska?
Be prepared for anything. The weather is unpredictable, and the thing that most people don't know is how the fire season works and how often that the road up there gets shut down for long periods of time. I didn't know that was a thing. And as I was preparing to go this year, they had a bad fire season and had a really bad fire by Fort St. Nelson. And the road was shut down for a long period of time, I think almost 2 weeks, as they fought that fire.
It's pretty bizarre to plan something like that and then be blindsided by the fact there's a fire cutting off your route.
Yeah, and it's kind of one way up, one way back. So you can't, really take a detour. You just have to kind of wait for the road to open back up.
Yeah, and if you're stuck on the other side for 2 weeks, that could get expensive.
Yeah, exactly. And the lack of resources in terms of hotels or places to stay, they just don't have a lot of resources up there. So, yeah, you'd be in trouble for sure.
Your daughter ended up going with you. Talk about that. How did that happen?
Yeah, so I was planning to go in August of 2024 and was all set and getting my things together. And my daughter and I were having lunch in June, and we were talking about the trip. And she mentioned that her work was kind of pressuring her to take some time off. She had a lot of PTO built up and they wanted her to use it. So I jokingly said, well, why don't you come to Alaska with me? And she said, yeah, I'll do it. And I was like, wait, what? Really? Serious? And my wife had backed out. She had gotten a promotion and she was pretty busy with work and wasn't going to be able to go. So the plan was I was going to go up by myself, which I really didn't want to do. Not that I couldn't have done it, but I just thought it would have been more fun doing it with someone. And so when my daughter said that she would be interested in going and wanted to do it, I was tickled to death. I was super excited. So we had to kind of plan to get her some gear. Luckily, she's about the same size as my wife, so a lot of my wife's gear fit her. My daughter has been on the back of my motorcycle a few times, but is definitely not a seasoned two-up rider.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we've just done some small little rides around the city together. So we got her some gear. I got her a helmet. Wanted her to have a new helmet, and we kind of went out on a little shakedown ride one afternoon where we had some time together, and spent about 90 minutes only riding and testing the gear and making sure that she could hear. My daughter is hearing impaired. She can hear top end and low end sounds, but mid range, she only hears about 50%. She was born with a hearing loss. And so she misses that mid range speech level.
Yeah, which is where most of our speech happens, the part
Exactly.
we identify. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I was concerned that she wouldn't be able to hear using the intercom system. And so we kind of messed around with that and got that to be a workable solution for her just by turning up the volume. So in that 90 minutes, we were ready to go.
90 minutes. That's all. That was your prep. That was your shakedown. 90 minutes. It doesn't seem like a lot, Brad.
It wasn't a lot. And I'm a seasoned rider, so I thought I could handle anything that came our way.
Mm-hmm.
But I told her, as we got closer to the send-off day, I told her, I said, well, the first day, if you want to bow out, you can. But after that, you're committed until we get to Alaska. So you're gonna have to dig in. And she did an amazing job. She was fantastic. We quickly got into a groove of stopping at gas stops and her doing her thing and me doing my thing. When we'd get to the hotel at night, we had a routine. So we clicked immediately. It was great.
Audrey, your daughter's Audrey, that's her name?
That's correct.
Right. So Audrey's hearing impairment. I just want to ask about that, about how you solve that, because comms are difficult for anyone with normal or somewhat normal hearing. It's difficult to hear, especially unless you're putting in earbuds, because you've got all the road noise. So you found just turning it up was enough. Were there any other things that you learned in there that you can pass on?
I talked loudly.
That's it.
Yeah, very loudly. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, that was it. It seemed to work for us. There was a lot of repeating. I will say that, as we would talk back and forth. I found myself, repeating the message a time or two before she would catch it.
The other thing I'm just thinking about, you're riding a faired bike with a fairing on it. It's a 1250 RT, was that it?
That's correct.
Right. So
yeah, there's a lot of wind protection with that motorcycle.
Right.
So you don't have the wind noise that you would have on, say, a typical GS or other styled adventure bike. You're in a bubble.
Right. Much more comfortable for riding long distances, I'm sure. Talk about the ride itself. What did you experience?
It was great. And, we kind of quickly, like I said, fell into a routine. What I was kind of taken back by that road is everybody's going the same direction and kind of doing the same thing. So you see some of the same people at rest stops, gas stations, and everyone kind of leapfrogs each other. And so I think the second day we were getting gas, and this gentleman rolled into the gas station, and he was on a older Harley Davidson, and it was loaded up, and gave him a wave as he was coming into the gas station and as we were leaving. And then the next day we were up by the Yukon border, and Audrey and I were off to the side and taking our picture at the Yukon border sign. And he rolls by and does a U-turn and comes back and introduces himself and says, "Hey, I'm Ed. I'm from the Netherlands, and I've been seeing you guys up and down the road." And so we stopped and took a picture and talked for a little bit. And I saw Ed every day for the next week and a half. we would pull into gas stations and, "Hey, there's Ed." it was very comical.
All on your own adventure, but coming together to fuel up and sleep.
Yeah, absolutely. 100%.
Right.
Yeah. So our trip, I had planned to take the northern route into Alaska, go up to Dawson City and cross over on the top of World Highway. Through watching videos and talking to people, I just really wanted to do that road. It's a pretty remote part of the country. It's gravel road. I'd never ridden gravel. I've got an RT, so I kind of stick to pavement. And I thought, well, I might want to put some adventure style tires on the RT just for that stretch of the road, because I was very concerned about getting to Dawson City and doing, I think it's close to 70 miles of gravel top of World Highway. And I was very concerned about there being, wet weather or the ground being wet, and then me being on street tires. So before I left, I had put adventure tires on the RT, some TKC 70s, and we went across the top of World Highway on 2 up, and I told Audrey the day before, as we were in some road construction, I said, "Well, I was going to tell you this when we were on the top of World Highway, but I've never ridden on gravel before. So this is the first time. We're going to give it a go and see what happens." She was a little cautious, but she trusts me, so it all worked out.
Well, hang on, Brad. Let me just ask here, because I want to jump back, because you said you spent a lot of time planning this, thinking about it, watching videos from what other people had done on their trip. You didn't spot the gravel thing? Ned Cease is the brainchild behind Double Take Mirror. That's the mirror that I think should be on every single motorcycle. This is how it all started. One day, Ned was out riding, and in a single crash, he managed to break off both his stock mirrors and his master cylinder. Of course, he was stranded at that point. I mean, he eventually got home, but that's what inspired him to come up with a better way. He wanted to create something that provided great optics for on-road, but also that was capable of folding away when off-road, or in the event of a crash, to keep your cockpit safe from harm as well. That they fold over, they don't break off the mounts. In a typical back-of-the-napkin fashion, Ned mapped out a dual pivot mirror system and set out to design it. And long story short, there was a lot of testing, and ultimately, the Enduro mirror, that was their original mirror, was born. And now, 14 years down the road, Double Take has done a complete redesign. It's still the same great mirror, but it's an all-new mounting system. Double Take now uses a proprietary no-crush ball mount and a new arm. It's super easy to fold over for off-road riding, infinitely adjustable on-road, even with your gloves on. It'll be the last mirror you'll buy, because Double Take mirrors are guaranteed for life. They say, you break it, we replace it, nobody matches our warranty. And when you hear that, that's quality. DoubleTakeMirror.com. Anytime you're dealing with them, throw in there that you heard them here on Adventure Rider Radio. DoubleTakeMirror.com. Pearlie's Possum Socks are the best cold weather socks on the planet, period. Pearlie's are the official sock of Adventure Rider Radio. I did that because I fell in love with Pearlie socks. I used to guide wilderness trips for a living. I've spent my entire life doing things in the outdoors, and I've ridden motorcycles in some terrible, terrible cold weather conditions. And the best socks I've ever tried for all of these things are Pearlie's Possum Socks. The owners, Duke and Margot, they're adventure riders. They've knitted these Pearly socks specifically for us that wear boots for riding, etc. But the blend of possum fur, merino wool keep our feet warm, dry, stink-free, no matter how hard you ride, no matter what your limits are, no matter how much you push things, you can extend those limits by wearing Pearly's possum socks. Pearly'sPossumSocks.com is a website. Anytime you're dealing with them, throw in there that you heard them here on Adventure Rider Radio. Pearly'sPossumSocks.com.
No, I knew there was gravel up there. I just thought I'll deal with that and I'll take it slowly. And I didn't think it would be anything that I couldn't handle. I just thought I'd have to be extra cautious when I was on it.
Right. But you've got a pillion with you as well, which makes things a little more complicated.
My daughter has a pillion, so I was being very cautious.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, not that we would, I hate to go down that road because not that we would value anyone less, but when it's your daughter, there's an extra portion of concern there, isn't there?
That's right. Yeah, I was very cautious and did not take any risks. We probably could have went a little bit faster as we were on the gravel parts, but I slowed it down and just wanted to make sure that we arrived safely. And, that part of the world, going from Whitehorse to Dawson City, over top of World and back down to Chicken, Alaska and to Tok, those roads are rough. Mm-hmm. They are very, very rough. They're not, even the paved parts are not great. So yeah, you have to be very cautious. And
you're beating your bike up.
You're beating your bike up.
Mm.
There's parts of that road where it's basically a 3-lane road or 3-track road where cars kind of go down the middle. And so when you're on the motorcycle and there's a vehicle coming your way, it would be very easy for you to go over to the side to get away from the vehicle and get sucked into some loose gravel and go down. Mm. I could see that happening very easily.
When you say 3 tracks, the 3 tracks meaning the center track, both the opposing traffic uses the same track.
That's correct. Yeah, that's right.
Which always makes it difficult. For a rider, you can stay in the right-hand track, which is probably your smartest bet if you can't switch back and forth easily. But it certainly makes for close calls.
Yeah, it could. You could get into a lot of trouble. It's remote up there, so you kind of allow yourself to lose focus because there's nobody coming and going. And mm-hmm. then when somebody does come your direction, you have to get yourself alert again. And yeah, I could see where you could go down very, very easily.
Now, is there much to see as you're doing this? I mean, are you sort of looking off to the sides as well?
Yeah, you're looking off to the side. You're looking at the scenery, wildlife, lots of wildlife. And, when we got up to that part of the world, I was really taken back by the boreal forest and how clean that air was. Mm. There were moments where you were riding, and I don't know if you'd get that if you were in a car, but on the motorcycle, you certainly took that in, that was just pure oxygen. There's no pollution. There's no industry up there. There was no wildfires at the time. So it was just pure oxygen, and it was heavenly.
Hmm. You ended up having to turn back. What happened there?
Yeah, so our goal was to go up to the Arctic Circle. That was going to be our turnaround point. We were going to go to Fairbanks, take a day in Fairbanks, goof around, and then go up to the Arctic Circle. And the day that our Arctic Circle day, it was raining pretty heavily. And so I didn't want to go that far north. I didn't think that was a good idea. And so I told Audrey, hey, let's just go up to the Dalton Highway sign. It's paved the whole way up there. We'll just dash up there real quick and take a picture at the Dalton Highway sign, and we'll turn around and we'll be home in a couple of hours. And so we jumped on the bike and left a bunch of the gear in the hotel because we were going to be back in a couple of hours.
Mm-hmm.
And we went up to or that was the goal, was to go to the Dalton Highway sign. And as we were going, it was raining. The weather wasn't good. And we got stuck in some road construction. And one of the nice things about riding in Alaska on a motorcycle is when there's road construction, they want motorcycles to go to the front of the line. So if there's a pilot car that is moving traffic through the road construction, motorcycles go to the front of the line so that the pilot car can see the motorcycle and make sure the motorcycle gets through that construction safely.
Mm-hmm.
And so they, waved me to the front of the road construction, and I got up there, and the pilot car came, and we took off. And I wasn't expecting the conditions to be as bad as they were, or the construction to be as long as it was. And we were probably in a construction zone that was maybe 5 miles or so.
Wow.
And it was just pure mud.
And you're following the pilot car.
Yeah, with these big trucks behind you, all these working trucks that are, right on your tail.
Right.
And I'm trying to be cautious because I am on a basically street bike riding through mud. And at one point, they pulled a big tarp down in front of us to keep the dirt from getting overly wet. And so we were riding on this wet tarp. And
wow.
Yeah, it was dodgy. It was very dodgy. And we got through that road construction, and my nerves were shot. And I said, that's it. We're turning around. I have to turn around right now, because if I wait and think about it, I won't want to go back.
So you could turn around and ride back through it again.
Yeah, we got our picture and turned around. We did not get our picture at the official Dalton Highway sign, the one that everybody posts online, the big wood one. I didn't go that far. I just wanted to get the heck out of there. So we took our picture at the little metal sign. I learned later that we were about a quarter of a mile from the big wood sign. But we just turned around and I told the guy working the flag, I said, hey, let these cars go in front of me, and I'll make it, but I don't want to be pressured with those cars right behind me. And he had told me that a week before there was a group of Harley guys that had went through on their motorcycles and had a similar experience that I did, except for they towed their bikes out. They wouldn't go back through.
Oh,
and
really? Wow.
I said, yeah, I can understand that.
What was it like? Talk about what that was like to ride.
Well, like I said, I'm not an adventure guy. So, my skill level of riding through mud is 0.
Mm-hmm.
And it was super slippery. It was cakey. So it was all over the motorcycle, all that mud in the brake calipers. And yeah, the bike was a mess. But yeah, it was very, very slippery. And, I went slowly, and we didn't do a whole lot of shifting lanes. We just kind of kept our front wheel straight and kept a steady speed and just made our way through it. But yeah, it was super dodgy.
What did it feel like the bike wanted to do?
Fall over.
Fall over.
It was very slippery. I could tell that if I gave it a little bit more throttle, that probably the back end would come out and it would go down. I felt like if I did any sudden turns of the front wheel, that it would go down.
Mm.
And so I just took my time and kept a steady speed.
Did that bike have traction control on it?
Well, it has different modes, as rain mode and I was in rain mode, which, it basically controls your throttle a little bit to make sure that you don't,
Speed it
add
up.
too much.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So
Still terrifying anyway.
yeah, very, especially for somebody that doesn't ride on that. I think some of the adventure guys that, ride off road and do, single track and stuff like that, they probably would have had no problem, would have, flown right through that. But that was not in my skill level.
Well, there's a lot of things there too. I mean, you're a long way from home. You're in a place you don't know. You've got somebody in the back. You're riding with a pillion, and then it's raining. I mean, there's so many things there that they're sort of piled up on you, and not to mention the pressure of the vehicles behind you. And many drivers don't have any sort of empathy for what it is like to handle a motorcycle in those conditions. So they're just like, "Come on, buddy, pick it up a little bit, or get off the road." But you can't go anywhere.
That's right. And, those are working trucks. They're doing a job up there. We're in their environment. We think it's fun to go up there and do that. But, those guys are working.
Yeah.
And, we're kind of in their way at times as we're on our adventure. So, yeah, I could see where they would be, get out of my way. I got a job to do. And yeah.
Did you get any sense one way or another how the drivers felt about tourists, so to speak?
I didn't get any vibes that they didn't want us there for sure. I thought everybody was friendly to me, but I could see where, you could get yourself into trouble, and then they might be a little grumpy with you being up there underprepared.
Mm-hmm. So you turn around, you ride back through. What happens?
Yeah, so we ride back through, and again, this time the cars were in front of me. So, I took that pressure off of myself, which was great. And oddly enough, it wasn't as bad the second time as it was the first time. The rain had died down just enough. And I think all of those cars and trucks and semis going through kind of packed everything down, which made the going back a lot easier than going up there. But still pretty dodgy. I was happy to be out of there. And I realized at that moment how much trouble you could get into in Alaska if you weren't prepared. It's not a place to mess around.
Did you feel like you were prepared other than not practicing the gravel?
Yeah, I thought I was very prepared. I had studied a lot of the maps, knew kind of where I was all the time. I had a Garmin device that tracks your whereabouts and has the SOS button. And so I felt like if I got into trouble that I could just press that and someone would be along eventually. So I didn't feel like I was in too terrible of danger by any means. But you look at the maps and you study the routes, and you are at times very remote and very by yourself, but there's a lot of people up there. It's not as remote as what I first thought it was. Certainly there are times, but for the most part, there's people around you.
And it's a main route, so anyone going up or down is going to be on that route. So it does sort of concentrate everyone into one area. If someone was to come to you now, Brad, maybe at your work or something like that, and say, I'm thinking of doing the Alaska thing, what would you tell them about gravel?
I would tell them there's a lot of it up there. And, the part from, as I came back home, the part from Whitehorse to Toke, that is not a good road. You're about 2 miles of paved road with frost heaves and potholes, and maybe a mile of gravel every other way for 300 miles. It's gravel and potholes and gravel and potholes.
So would you tell them that they should have training or go get?
Yeah, I would say take caution. Yeah, for sure.
I guess what I'm coming to is I'm wondering if you went to do it again, would you ride gravel before you got there? Would you make it the same thing where you just go and try it when you get there?
Well, it's funny. People ask me, when I was going, everybody said, "Are you going to buy a GS?" And I said, "No, I own a RT. I'm going to ride the RT." And when I came back, people asked me again, did you take the right motorcycle? And I did, because it's the motorcycle I have. So that's the best one to ride. But I would say probably 80% of that road, fantastic on the RT. And maybe 10% you'd want a adventure bike,
Mm-hmm.
and maybe 10% a dirt bike if it's raining.
Right. That is an interesting concept, or an interesting saying that we often put out there. All of us in this industry, ride the bike that you have. And I always have a little bit of trouble with that, because I think you have to do more than that. I think to just blindly say that is not really painting the full picture. I think you have to say, does the bike suit your adventure? Not just the fact that it's there. I mean, if you really love your motorcycle, if you really love the RT and you'll ride it through anything, I mean, let's face it, there's people who went around the world on all kinds of bikes that most people would say that's not suitable to the task. And if you're one of those people, that's great. But I always see those as the anomalies. I'm thinking that, yes, take the bike that you have as a first look. But I think you also have to look at your adventure and what you expect from your adventure, and say, is this bike suitable to my adventure? Because like you're saying, like sections of it is dirt bike material. Well, that could be the unraveling of a whole adventure right there with the wrong motorcycle.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. And, I wasn't going to take any roads that were off trail or, back roads or anything like that. I was staying to the main roads, and most of them are paved. There was the section of Top of World that was gravel, and I'd seen people do it on Harley Davidsons and Gold Wings and bikes of that nature. So I thought, well, if they have done it on those motorcycles, I certainly can do it on my RT. But I do believe probably a GS or an adventure bike is probably a better bike to take on that road, just for those sections that are gravel, or if they are doing road construction and you get stuck in a portion of that's they're dirt. There's no gravel on the road construction. They're working on the road, and so you're going through whatever they have unearthed, and you have to make your way through it. So. That being said, the weather can be foul. It can be raining, which makes it muddy and slippery. And so if you're on a street bike or a sport bike, you're going to have a hard time.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not going to be fun.
Yeah. And as you say, whether, if somebody goes through and it's sunny, that's one experience. Somebody else goes through like you did when it's raining and raining hard. That's a completely different experience.
That's right.
Same road.
And, I've seen people, post pictures of them at the Arctic Circle sign on their, Harley Davidsons or Gold Wings or even their GSs. And now that I've done it, I just shake my head and think, well, they had nice weather.
Yeah. Which is sort of my point, is what I was saying, is because I think sometimes you'll hear people say, well, I know somebody who went around the world on C-110s, or something like that. That's great for a certain person, but will it be great for you? I think that's something you have to think about, and you have to consider your skills that you have and what you're expecting from the trip and where you're planning to ride, and also the potential, because even if you're like discussing this route, the potential of this route is one thing sunny and another thing rainy, and another thing rainy and wet, so it changes drastically from one to the other. And then what's your plan? What's your sort of alternate? Is there an alternate? Because in this case, there's not. You've got one route, as you said. And like we talked about at the start, you could go up there, and if for some reason there's a fire and the road gets blocked, you're stuck for 2 weeks in one spot. So all of these things are things that you have to consider before you go to do something. I'm not saying go out and buy a new bike for every adventure, but I'm just saying I think it has to be part of your thought process.
Yeah. And also part of my thought process or what I did not think of or plan for was really replacing a tire. And on my way back, I had an adventure with my tire that needed to be replaced. And given the motorcycle that I was on, finding that tire was not easy.
Oh, well, okay. Let's talk about that. But first, I just want to, Audrey
Sure.
didn't stay with you, did she? She ended up she flew home.
Yeah, that's right. So she flew. We got to Anchorage, and she flew home, and that was always the plan, was for her to go up and experience that. We would get to Anchorage, she'd jump on an airplane and fly back, and then I would ride solo home. Right. And so we left that morning, and she gets the Uber comes to pick her up to take her to the airport, and she gets in the Uber, and I ride out of the hotel parking lot, and I was immediately hit with a sense of, oh man, I'm alone up here. We had such a good time riding together and having that experience, that when she left, I was really depressed, because I thought, man, this sucks. Now I got to do this all by myself. This is not, I'm sure it's going to be fun, but it's better when you can share it with someone. And so, that day, that first day of riding was a little difficult, because I, was certainly missing her and having her with me, and I was by myself. And the second day, I ended up meeting a guy on the road. We had passed each other, and he was on a BMW, and I waved at him, and we stopped at the gas stop and started talking. And then we just rode together the next couple of days. We shared a hotel, and he was with me the rest of the adventure. Oh, nice. And so we went down the Cassiar Highway, which doesn't have as many resources as what the Alcan does. So I was happy to have somebody with me that was riding, near me, that, kind of could keep an eye on myself if I got into trouble. And that was fun. It was fun riding with him. And we stopped and got a hotel, and shared a hotel room that night, and went to Hyder, Alaska, and went to the Salmon Glacier and saw all of that, which was fantastic. And then on the way back from Salmon Glacier, I stopped at a gas stop, got gas, checked over my motorcycle, and realized that I was down to the cords on my tires.
Both tires?
No, just the rear.
Oh. RoadDogPub.com is your gateway to incredible stories, books about motorcycles. Road Dog Pub was founded and still owned and operated by an avid rider, author, and writer, Mike Fitterling, who's got some of his own books to line up, like Northeast by Northwest, Thoughts on the Road. Road Dog Pub specializes in publishing great motorcycle books, and man, they have a bunch of them. Like Rubber Side Down by Ron Davis, Two Wheel Wind Therapy by Kathleen Turner, Shiny Side Up, again by Ron Davis, Hit the Road Jack by Jackie Furno, Man in the Saddle by Paul Van Hoof. We've had a bunch of these people on the show. In Search of Greener Grass by Graham Field, Asphalt and Dirt by Aaron Heinrich. So many more. Oh, also, A Short Ride in the Jungle by Antonio Bolingbroke Kent is once again available. RoadDogPub.com is a website. Of course, you can find their books at any fine bookstore, but why not order direct from the publisher? RoadDogPub.com. Anytime you're dealing with them, throw in there that you heard them here on Adventure Rider Radio. RoadDogPub.com. If you want to add to your skill level, particularly when you're riding off-road, look at IMS Products foot pegs. IMS has a full line of adventure motorcycle foot pegs that will actually change your ride. They did it for me. By putting those pegs on, the connection, the leverage, the handling, the enhanced ability that I have was markedly different. Just an incredible payoff. IMSproducts.com is the website. Anytime you're dealing with them, throw in there that you heard them here on Adventure Rider Radio. IMSproducts.com. Oh, so you're down to the cords.
Yeah. Really badly.
TKC C70s, that's what it was?
Yeah, and I put them on right before we left. So I didn't even have maybe 4,000 miles on those tires.
Right. Yeah.
But given the fact that we were fully loaded, the roads are rough, that tire isn't specifically made for the heavy RT, high speeds. We just ate through the tire.
Yeah.
So this was about 5 o'clock on a Saturday night when we realized that my tire was toast.
Mm-hmm.
And thankfully, there was some cell coverage at that gas stop that we were at. And I told, so I called my wife and said, "Hey, not good, tire problem. Don't know what I'm going to do. Try to find me a tire." And I called my shop and did the same thing and said, "Hey, don't know what I'm going to do. Find a tire." And the guy that I was with, Steve, he's from New Zealand, and he had been in that area before riding. And he said, "Well, let's just ride to Smithers and we'll get help in Smithers." And so he rode with me. We went really slowly. I was going about 40 miles an hour to Smithers, waiting for the back tire to pop at any moment. And, Steve was fantastic. Like I said, he stayed with me the entire time. I'd only met him a couple of days before, and he didn't have to ride with me. He could have said, "Well, sucks to be you. Hope it works out."
or you'll be fine. You'll work it out, sort of thing. I'm on my adventure, and I'm from New Zealand.
Yeah.
I'm not going to waste my time here with you. Yeah, it would make sense.
Exactly. And he didn't do that. He stayed with me the entire time. We went slow. We got to Smithers. We got our hotel, and I started trying to figure out what I was going to do to source a tire. And I remembered that BMW, if you're a BMW MOA member, they have this thing called the MOA Anonymous. And the members will put in there what they are willing to help out another rider with. So their phone number will be, it's on an app, and their phone number will be there. And then they'll have little icons like a tent or a wrench or something along that lines of, "Hey, I've got a garage," or I've got a trailer, come tent in my yard, those kind of things.
Mm-hmm.
And so I got on the Anonymous app, and there was one phone number in Smithers, and I called the person and left him a message and just said, "Hey, I'm Brad. I'm in Smithers. I've got a problem with my tire, hoping that you can help me out." And then I sent him a text message right afterwards. And within 5 minutes of sending that text message, he reached out and said, "Hey, Brad, no problem. We're going to get you taken care of. Don't worry about it. We'll get you a tire." And, it was a small town. Smithers is a small town. It's one of those areas of the world where they just take care of each other. And I think that's just in their DNA as a small community of, taking care of your neighbor or someone in need.
Mm-hmm.
And we all do that in the motorcycle community anyway. I think all of us kind of are built that way. But the next morning I woke up and I was still nervous, and I thought, there's no way this is going to work out. And so I sent him another text message and said, "Hey, I, just really nervous about this tire thing." And again, he calls me like 5 minutes later and he says, "Hey, Brad, no problem. I'm on my way to your hotel right now, and we're going to get this tire sorted out. I know a guy. He used to run the Harley Davidson shop here in town. It closed down 2 years ago, but he has some tires in storage, and I know that he can help you out."
Wow.
And I said, "Great. Can he put the tires on?" And he says, "No, but I know a guy who owns the motorcycle shop, and I'll call him and I'll have him open up his shop and we'll get that tire put on." And I thought, well, there's no way you're going to get this guy to come in on a Sunday on his motorcycle shop to open up his shop and put this tire on. And he did it. He sourced me a tire. We met a guy named Steve that used to run the Harley Davidson shop in Smithers. He had the tire in his warehouse. Thankfully, I had taken out $300 of Canadian money before the trip, just in case of emergency.
Mm-hmm.
And so I paid the guy $250 for the tire, and we went over to the motorcycle shop in Smithers, and Sam, the owner of the motorcycle shop, he put the tire on, and away I went.
Wow, that is a fast turnaround. Now this I just want to go back to that anonymous book, because when I got the anonymous book many years ago, it was a printed version. Actually, they'd mail you the printed version, but you're saying it's an app now. This is a thing for the BMW club itself, correct?
Correct. Yeah, if you're a BMW member, you have access to that MOA Anonymous.
Right, which is very cool. And like you say, it's just a list of sort of names in there, and or actually not even names, it's numbers, isn't it?
Correct. Yeah, you don't have a name, but you have a number, and you can call it or text it or whatever.
Yeah, and that's the idea. That's why it's anonymous, right? You do that.
Correct.
There's other ways you can do this too. I mean, there's lots of groups on Facebook or whatever social media app, on WhatsApp and things like that you can follow for the same sort of thing.
That's right. And I did that while I was sitting in the hotel. I got onto Facebook and just started looking around BC riders, and the various Facebook groups that are out there, and again, just put out there, hey man, I'm in trouble, I need a tire.
Mm-hmm.
And what's funny is, after we got the tire put on the motorcycle, we went down the road, I don't know, maybe an hour or so, and got gas. And while I was at the gas pump, a gentleman approached me and said, "Oh wow, you're riding an RT? That's great. I have an RT." And so we talked for a few minutes, and I said, "Yeah," I said, "I just had a tire problem back in Smithers, and thought I was in trouble, and ended up getting taken care of." And the guy says, "Oh, I have a tire machine," and gave me his phone number, and says, if this doesn't work out for you, give me a call, and I'll get you helped." And it was quite amazing. And so when I got to the hotel that night, that gentleman had looked me up on Facebook and friended me, and
right.
Yeah, it was great.
But when you said you check your bike over at the gas station, you found out your tire is worn through to the cords. Obviously, you haven't really been checking it that carefully as you went along.
No, not as carefully as I should have. That's for sure. I think, hindsight being 2020, when I was in Anchorage, I probably should have did a better job looking over my motorcycle and checking the tread wear and doing something about it there preventatively before I got into trouble.
Yeah. I mean, does that cross your mind as you're trying to get it fixed? Like a little bit of embarrassment, just wore it completely out, and I'm in the middle of nowhere.
Especially since I work in a motorcycle shop, I should know better, right? Like there's things that you should do that, we don't always follow all the, advice we give.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I should have taken a look at that back in Anchorage and done a deeper dive into the motorcycle and made sure that it was going to, make it home. But in my mind, I just always thought, well, I'm, only on a 5,000 mile trip. And I always knew that once I got home, I would take those adventure tires off the motorcycle and, put the regular street tires on there. So I just, kind of in my mind, I had it set that, well, they only have to last 5,000 miles. They should be good.
Yep. And that's a great reminder. Anytime you change your tires, if you're going to a different kind of tire, you can't expect the exact same mileage as what you get out of your normal tire, but add on that some weight and some different terrain, and you can have different wear patterns. So yeah, you want to be really on the ball for things like that. And like you say, we always say these things. Yeah, you should check over your bike every time you get on it. Not everybody's doing that every time. There's lots of reasons that you get sidetracked or whatever. But anytime you're making changes like that, or you're doing something different, those are the times that we should really sort of up the ante as far as being very diligent about checking things over. The rough roads, etc., shake things loose, the dirt, all of that sort of thing.
Yeah, in hindsight, I wish I would have done a better job of, cleaning up the motorcycle when I was in Anchorage. that was a perfect spot to take that time and really look the motorcycle over to make sure that I was going to be able to make it back the 2,500 miles or whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
But I didn't do that.
Hey, that experience of when your daughter left, and by the way, I was just before I ask you this, did your daughter, when she was leaving, did she say that was great?
Yeah. So I gave her a Christmas gift. I took a bunch of the photos that we had taken along the way and put them into a nice bounded book and gave those to her for Christmas. And she was flipping through the pages and her face lights up and she says to me, "That was an awesome trip." And as a father, that just warmed my heart and really was really impactful.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I'll bet. I mean,
there's a good photo of her and I at the hotel. We took a selfie as the Uber car is pulling up and she's got a big smile on her face. And everybody says, well, that's because she wanted to get the heck out of there and off the motorcycle.
When she's finally done, that's the last time I'll have to get in the back of that thing.
That's right. Exactly.
Well, I guess the real proof will be next time you ask her if she wants to go on a trip and what she says. If she says, "Oh yeah, I'm busy. I've got to wash the car and feed the hog," sort of thing, then you might know that it wasn't as good for her as it was for you.
Maybe it was a one-time adventure.
Yeah, it could be. It could be. But what I was curious about, so you sort of had that depression afterwards when you drop her off and realize you're all by yourself, and it's a different trip when we're by ourselves. What did that make you? What did you come out with at the end as far as your thoughts on solo travel versus two up or even riding with another person?
For me, I like to be with someone. I can do solo trips, and I have done solo trips where, I'm gone for a day or two, and that's fine. But I kind of like to be with people, whether that's another rider, two up on the back, my wife, being on the back. I just prefer that for me personally. And I feel like for me, I get more joy out of sharing that experience as it happens with that person than telling about it later and saying, "Hey, look at my vacation photos."
Right.
And somebody being disinterested, right?
They're rolling their eyes thinking, "Oh my God, he's got a whole bunch of them there." When you see
exactly.
When the person pulls the phone out and puts it in front of you, he's like, "Oh no."
Oh, videos too? No way.
That's right. Yeah. No, there's definitely merit to that for sure. So as far as the solo thing, you didn't get anything out of riding by yourself on it?
It was okay. Like I said, I only did it for, basically a day and a half. While I was by myself, and then I hooked up with Steve from New Zealand. And that day going from Toke to Whitehorse, I was under some pretty big stress of making sure that I didn't crash the motorcycle because of the potholes and it was raining that day, so you couldn't tell how deep those potholes were. Mm-hmm. Whether it was going to be something that was going to bend your tire or, something that you could just kind of ride through. And that road, you don't really have a choice to not hit potholes. You're going to have to hit them. They're everywhere. And so I focused on riding and, really paying attention to the road and not as much to the scenery. So I think my mind was pretty preoccupied with just keeping the bike going and keeping myself safe. And I really wasn't focused that much on being alone, but you certainly are taken back at times where you're like, man, I'm way the heck out here and there's nobody around.
Mm-hmm.
And there are moments of that where you think, if I get into trouble, this could be bad.
Nobody cares. You sort of get the feeling like if there's nobody there to care about you in particular.
Yeah.
I mean, exactly. Like you said, this Steve guy from New Zealand, he could have easily, and totally within his right, and there'd be nothing wrong with him. He said to you, "Hey, I got to keep going because, I've got a big adventure to do. I've got limited time, et cetera, et cetera."
And you're right. And he did have limited time because he was, trying to get down to Los Angeles where he was going to pack up the bike and get it ready to ship. And
right.
he had a plane ticket. He had an end date to this. So, he had every right to, basically tell me, good luck.
Yeah.
And yet he didn't. And, I just found that to be so inspiring that he would, take the time to ensure that I was going to be all right and be able to continue my journey, and stuck right there with me the whole time. It was fantastic.
Looking back on this trip, now that you're back, what are some of the key lessons and insights that you've gained that others could benefit from?
I think you can over plan. I did a lot of planning, way too much probably, where, you envision how everything is going to go and how every, mile is and what spot you should stop to take a picture of, this mountain or this, this landmark. And I think there's value in planning, but not over planning, and allowing yourself to kind of take the adventure in. I probably did more planning about going up than I did coming back, but there was a time as I was planning where I thought, I kind of known and seen everything there is to see on video. I just need to experience this now.
Oh,
and
right.
So I maybe don't plan quite as much. Keep yourself safe, but don't plan quite as much.
Mm-hmm. What else?
I wasn't expecting to make friends along the way, and running into Ed, running into to Steve, and the guys that helped me, Sam at I Candy Custom Motorcycles, and Fred, the doctor who kind of facilitated everything. I wasn't expecting to make friends along the way, and I thought I'd just go up there with my daughter. We'd have a good time, and I'd come home. Mm-hmm. And now I have a friend in New Zealand, and I'm sure that if I go up to Smithers again, it'd be great to see Sam and Fred, and it was fantastic.
Sort of expands your world.
Absolutely.
Yeah. What other things did you learn?
Maybe don't put TKC 70s on the RT. Probably not the best tire for that motorcycle. But
the other lesson might be check the mileage that many people are getting with it.
Check the mileage. Certainly look over the bike a little bit better. And I didn't do that tire any favors by overloading the motorcycle and the speeds at which I was going. Not that I was speeding along the way. I wasn't breaking laws. Mm-hmm. Wink, wink. But you just have to be very careful with it, as you say, when you put new gear on your motorcycle and you're unfamiliar with it. You have to pay closer attention to it.
Yeah, new gear, new riding, anything that changes your patterns. You got to figure it's something you need to watch.
Absolutely.
Anything else in there?
Well, we're looking at doing another adventure. I'm going with a coworker up to BC this summer, and we're going to go to Bella Coola and ride over there, and that will be the final leg. I've ridden every major road and mile in BC after this next trip. So
what do you do then?
I go across Canada, I suppose. I don't know. Got to figure something out.
But the good thing is here, when you're saying there's another trip you had a great time then. Obviously, this was an amazing trip, and it inspired you to plan another one. Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah, I'm going to keep riding and keep traveling. I love riding the motorcycle and traveling on the motorcycle. I think you experience so much more than if you jump on an airplane or get in a car. All of your senses are alive, and you meet such amazing people along the way. It's just, you just don't get those experiences when you're traveling by other means.
On this trip up to Bella Coola on the coast of British Columbia, what will you, if anything, do different?
Definitely take a better look at the tires. That's for sure.
So you're still going to ride the RT?
Yeah, still going to ride the RT. There's only 13 miles of gravel, assuming that there's no road construction or anything else going on. So yeah, I'll ride the RT. The friend that I'm going with will be on the GS though.
Not that there's anything wrong with the RT. I think the RT is a great looking bike. I've never had one myself. And I certainly understand that for most of with this one, I guess be like 90% or 95% of your riding will be street riding, which the RT is, I assume, perfect for, an incredible bike to ride. It always reminds me of Simon Pavey telling me about we were talking about the KTMs that you and Charlie were wanting to ride, or at least Charlie was on their trip around the world. And they end up with the BMWs. But what Simon said was, he said that people don't realize, they see all the rough stuff they did in the video, but they don't realize how many miles of highway they drove and just how perfect that bike was for the highway. And this is back to that thing again about the perfect bike, right? You have to add it up. Like, some people look at it the other way. Some people say, I want the bike that's going to handle that's more of my thought process, the worst conditions. I want the bike that's best for those, and the other ones I can do without. But that's not the correct thought. That's just my thought process. So you really have to sort of weigh it up and look at it. So, I mean, the RT is your bike. It's what you want to ride. What I'm curious about is, with you riding this RT, is will you do any gravel practice before you go?
No gravel practice. We're just going to wing it. I had plenty of gravel practice this summer up in Alaska. But definitely my next motorcycle will be a GS. I think that those motorcycles, the KTM is in that realm. They're made for everything. And, they're great for the highway. They're great if you go off road, and they're great for if it gets muddy and ugly. And, that is truly the adventure bike, that is made for everything.
Yeah, I don't know if they're great at everything, but I know what you're saying. They're probably not great at everything, but yeah, they can do everything, right? Like within reason, and most people, when they're on an adventure, they're not riding, single track. They're doing stuff like what that you talked about. And yeah, I can see that any one of the adventure bikes, there's tons to choose from out there, would really make that a great bike to ride, fun bike to ride in all conditions, because it can, obviously the RT is not great in gravel.
No, it is not an off-road motorcycle. Yeah. And, probably should not be used for that, but yeah, we're gonna do it again.
Yeah. Well, I would ride it if it's a bike I had. I wouldn't let it stop me from going. That's for sure. I know that for sure. And I just figure, well, I'll adapt. Maybe I don't have enough money to do it, but I wouldn't be selling a bike just to go on a certain adventure, unless it was a huge one. Maybe if I was going for a couple of years or something.
Yeah. Well, thankfully, I do work at the shop there, so I can trade it in if I feel the need. But right now, I just, that's the bike for me, and I love riding it. And, I don't plan on doing much more gravel roads. So we'll get through this and then be on to pavement again.
Right. You said you've listened to this show for a number of years?
Yeah, I started listening to this show and the Raw show, I don't know, many, many years ago. And I've learned so much from the other guests that have been on this show and the Raw team. There's a wealth of information that's shared, whether it's Clinton's rider tips or, I love listening to Deep Trouble. Not that I don't want to see anybody get hurt or be put in a bad position, but it's just interesting to see how people get themselves out of those troubling spots.
Yeah.
And how they manage that, emotionally.
So your inspiration for going on this, is it like from some of what you've heard from people who have done their trips?
Yeah, a lot of it. There's a lot of your guests that have been on that have done the Trans-American Highway and, kind of go up to Alaska and back down and into South America. I don't know if I'll ever be adventurous enough to go down to South America, but man, it sure sounds fun.
And there's lots to be had right here in North America, isn't there? Lots of adventure right here in North America. I mean, you don't even have to go far from home most times to find some incredible places to ride.
No, and that's why, I encourage people when they're in the shop, I encourage them to go up to British Columbia because the Canadian border is kind of that natural cutoff spot where you just don't go, right? You're like, this is a border. I don't want to cross it.
It's a hassle.
I'm not. Yeah, it's a hassle, right? But British Columbia has some amazing roads and some amazing things to see, and it's right in our backyard. It's 2.5 hours to the border, so why not?
Yeah. Some real wilderness and wonderful roads. So many incredible places to ride. Amazing scenery.
Yeah, it's gorgeous country, and we're blessed to be able to go down to Mount Rainier and ride around Mount Rainier National Park, which is just a couple hours away from us, and that's beautiful. But when you get up into British Columbia and then even into Alberta and Banff and all of that, Jasper National Park, and man, that is breathtaking.
Yeah. Brad, how's your health now?
I'm good. Yeah, I feel like I'm back to my old self. The energy level is high. No thoughts of having cancer. I this coming fall will be the 5-year mark, which for many cancer survivors, that's kind of the cutoff point where you're like, hey, I made it.
Yeah, congratulations.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that date, but I don't think I have anything to worry about.
And did that bout with the tumor, does that change anything for you? Did it have any sort of permanent change on your life?
I think just inspiring myself to live more in the moment. I kind of came up with this mantra while I was recovering of live passionately. And so that's kind of been my thing ever since, is just appreciating the moment and appreciating the things that you're doing or going to do, and, live life. Nobody knows how long we have, and live it.
It's good to have a saying or something that you say to yourself, because you can't live appreciating stuff every day. You can't. I think there's very few people, if anyone, that can drive themselves to really appreciate life on a daily basis without some sort of reminder. And that's great. You've got live passionately. Something that you just tell yourself to remind yourself to just make sure that you're on the right road for you.
Yeah, absolutely. And when you're around your family and friends, take that moment in, because we don't always know how long we've got or what's going to come next. And, you can always kind of fall back on those memories or those things that you did with them and enjoy that experience.
Yeah. For you're thinking for yourself and your friends. I mean, we don't know how long any of us are here for.
Right.
Yeah. Brad, thanks so much for taking the time. Tell me about your trip. I really appreciate it.
Yeah. Thank you so much for having me. Appreciate it.
Was Brad Henrichs from his home in Bothell, Washington. We've got photos from Brad's adventures in the show notes for this episode on adventureriderradio.com. Like we do with every episode we do. Always drop by our website, have a look, photos, links, stories, and more. adventureriderradio.com. I just want to remind you that this episode has been brought to you by Green Chili Adventure Gear, greenchiliadv.com, Motobreeze Chain Oiler at motobreeze.com, and the Best Rest Products at cyclepump.com. And we'd really appreciate it if anytime you're dealing with these companies, anytime email or otherwise, let them know you heard them here on Adventure Rider Radio. That about wraps up another episode of Adventure Rider Radio, and we sure hope you enjoyed listening to it as much as we did making it. Special thanks to our producer, Elizabeth Martin, and of course you. Thank you very much for being a part of this by listening to the show. Hey, we would love to get a 5-star review from you wherever you're finding your podcast. Go to iTunes and give us a 5-star review, because that helps other people find the show. drop by our website when you get a minute and have a look. We've got all kinds of things on the website. Every episode that we do, we've been doing this over 10 years as of this episode right now, well over 10 years. Actually, we're almost up to 11 now for Adventure Rider Radio. And every episode that we've done has show notes in it, photographs and links and things like that, and maybe even a bit more to the story. So drop by the website and have a look at that. The other thing I'd like to ask is that you consider supporting the show. We produce this show every single week. Like I said, we've been doing it for over 10 years now. We've never missed a week. We do it for you, so you have something to listen to. We would really appreciate it if you're not doing it already. Consider supporting. The Patreon option would be the best for us because then we can count on you there each month. It doesn't have to be a lot. It can be as little or as much as you would like. We would appreciate your support. AdventureRiderRadio.com. Click on support. Now it's time to get out there and ride your bike. I hope you got a bunch of things coming up in the season. There's all kinds of stuff going on. There's shows to go to. There's rallies to go to. Overland Expo has a whole bunch of shows that you can go to. You definitely look at that. Revzilla also has the Get On ADV Fest. You might want to look at that as well. But get out there and do something and enjoy the season. Enjoy your season of motorcycling. My name is Jim Martin. Thank you so much for listening, and I will talk to you next week.
Hi, this is Scott Dobie, and you're listening to Adventure Rider Radio.